Save your time, save your money. Welcome to Real Time Railroad. I'm Cityman.
Today, we're going to discuss the recently trending Netflix series One Piece. Before this series aired, many netizens expressed negative expectations on various review websites. This is understandable, as turning manga into live-action shows has a very low success rate. Previously, the live-action movie adaptation of Dragon Ball set a low IMDb rating record of 2.5, which might have made many companies hesitant to adapt anime into live action. However, when I found out that the original One Piece manga author Eiichiro Oda was also working as the scriptwriter and actively involved in casting, I had a different perspective. As a novelist and scriptwriter, I can fully understand the mindset of an original author. Their work is like their child, and if given the opportunity to be part of the adaptation process, they would strive to stay faithful to the essence of the original work without making overly radical changes. This should be good news for many die-hard One Piece fans. After staying up late to binge-watch all 8 episodes, I have a more complete perspective on this new Netflix production. In conclusion, I would rate it 7.5 out of 10. While this score may not be very high for a series, it falls below IMDb's 8.5 rating and Rotten Tomatoes' 84 T-meter. Now, let me explain the reasons behind this score. Before reviewing this series, I'd like to approach it from 2 different perspectives. One as a One Piece fan and the other as a new viewer who hasn't read the manga. Let's start with the perspective of a fan. As an aspiring One Piece fan, I must say that this series has been very meticulous in terms of character fidelity. First of all, the casting choices for most of the main and supporting characters have been thoughtful. For example, Luffy, the actor, Nucky Godui, has an almost identical physique, long limbs, and a somewhat interesting appearance with big eyes. Eiichiro Oda, the original manga author, once mentioned in an interview that in his mind Luffy should resemble a Brazilian, and Inaki Godoy, who plays Luffy, is of Spanish descent, which aligns with the original vision. The actor portraying Zoro, Mackenyu, is another good choice. He has the broad shoulders and slim waist that closely resemble the manga character. He also exudes a handsome and cool aura in both looks and mannerisms. Nami's appearance slightly resembles Jennifer Lawrence, and her costume is generally in line with my imagination of the original character. Lastly, Usopp stands out among the main characters, even though he lacks the long nose from the manga, probably due to makeup challenges that could make it look unnatural. His personality and character are the most faithful among the group. He truly seems like a character stepped out of the manga. The other main characters, except for Captain Garp, like Sanji, Kobe, and Mihawk, along with the Evil Dragon, have all been faithfully adapted. I want to give a special mention to Buggy the Clown. The live-action version's completeness may even surpass that of the animated version. Apart from the characters, the important settings and the main storyline are also mostly true to the original. Of course, due to the need to condense 100 episodes of the manga into 8 episodes. There are inevitable omissions and the removal of some minor characters, but it's clear that Eiichiro Oda has tried his best to retain the classic elements from the original work without making too many changes. However, there are some shortcomings, and I believe the biggest one may come from the main character, Luffy. Despite the actor Nucky Godui trying to capture the essence of Luffy's character, it's clear that he didn't quite get the direction right. Luffy often flashes a wickedly charming smile which feels out of character. Fans know how Luffy smiles. Although the lead actor Inaki Godoy has been trying hard to portray a chummy feel, he seems to have misunderstood the direction. In the original source material, Luffy is sometimes silly and a bit adorable, while at other times he's serious and exudes an air of dominance. However, his performance appears somewhat awkward, especially when delivering the line.
And I will be the king of the pirates.
When it comes from his mouth, it often feels like arrogance. Of course, capturing that slightly eccentric quality that many characters in Japanese anime possess can be quite challenging in a live-action adaptation, so there's no need to be overly critical in this regard. Regarding the portrayal of Zoro, the issues are somewhat lighter. Mackenyu's performance conveys the cold and cool side of Zoro, but lacks some of the original Zoro's ruthlessness and killer instincts. However, this issue is less pronounced compared to Luffy's character. Additionally, in comparison to the animated version, the live-action adaptation has areas where it both falls short of and surpasses the original source material. Let's start with the aspects where it excels in comparison to the original. Firstly, the settings are worth noting. Thanks to Netflix's substantial resources, the costume and set designs are more exquisite and grandiose than the source material. They've even added elements not present in the animated series. For instance, the opening scene depicting Gol D. Roger's execution carries a visually striking impact. In contrast, the original animation, due to budget constraints at the outset, had somewhat rougher executions of such scenes. Another example is the depiction of the Bharati, the floating restaurant at sea, which reflects the considerable effort put in by the production team. Secondly, the pacing of storyline adaptation is notably more compact than the animated version. For instance, in the first episode, it starts with Nami's theft of the sea chart, and by the end it has already established the embryonic form of the core trio of the Straw Hat Pirates. This efficiency aids in the progression of the subsequent plot. Additionally, the inclusion of Nami's initial deception regarding the first pirate ship she acquired, a plot point absent from the anime, provides a more accurate and swift portrayal of the female lead's character. This aspect is handled better than in the animated version. Furthermore, when faced with the clown Pirate Boogie, Luffy immediately swallows the sea chart to ensure that all three of them aren't killed right away. This decision showcases Luffy's intelligence better than the animated adaptation. Now, let's discuss the areas where it falls short compared to the animated version. Firstly, there's a reduction in suspense. For instance, in the anime, it begins with a barrel floating on the sea, retrieved by islanders, and the audience remains unaware of its contents. It's only when a minor character attempts to break open the barrel that Luffy makes a dazzling entrance. In contrast, the live-action adaptation introduces Luffy beforehand, and he dives into the barrel before being salvaged, significantly diminishing the impact of the protagonist's first appearance. Furthermore, the revelation of Carp, who is Luffy's grandfather, is disclosed quite early in the live-action series. In contrast, in the manga, this secret remains hidden for hundreds of chapters, with numerous foreshadowing hints scattered throughout. Secondly, the live-action adaptation's action sequences are somewhat weaker. While One Piece isn't primarily known for its combat scenes, there's still room for improvement in this aspect in the live-action version. Hopefully this will be addressed in the second season. Additionally, the original anime featured numerous comedic elements, which are an essential part of what makes One Piece appealing. Due to various reasons, these comedic elements weren't as prominent in the live-action adaptation, which leaves a somewhat regrettable gap. Overall, from a fan's perspective, I believe this series could earn an 8 out of 10, surpassing many live-action adaptations of Japanese anime you might have encountered. However, this isn't the whole story. I also need to provide some insights from the viewpoint of non-fan viewers. If you've never seen One Piece before, this series might not shine as brightly for you. You'll likely draw comparisons with Pirates of the Caribbean and the captivating performance of Johnny Depp. In contrast, the young actors in this show might pale in comparison. Beyond the performances in various aspects like costumes, grandiose scenes and creativity, this series falls short when measured against Pirates of the Caribbean. After watching all 8 episodes, it lacks those striking designs that made the latter series memorable, like Captain Jack Sparrow pulling an entire treasure chest through the city with a carriage. Considering that even the highest rated Pirates of the Caribbean film on IMDb only reaches 8.1, it's probably challenging for this series to surpass 7 points in the eyes of non-fans. All in all, taking both factors into account, I'd estimate a score of 7.5 as a compromise. In simple terms, if you're not a fan, this series will likely feel mediocre. But if you're a loyal follower of the manga or anime, it might pleasantly surprise you. Finally, let's talk about some thoughts on adapting manga into live action. There are 2 fundamentally opposing viewpoints on this matter. One argues for staying as faithful as possible to the characters and plot, while the other advocates for more innovation. I align with the latter perspective, and the reason is quite straightforward. If a live-action adaptation almost entirely replicates the plot, and even the dialogues of the animated version, what's the point of watching the live action? You might as well watch the original. Additionally, the acting abilities of live-action actors might not match those of animated characters. You see, the strength of Japanese anime lies in the unique attributes of the two-dimensional world, distinctive sense of choinabyu and fiery passion. Purely in terms of plot and detailed design, it's often challenging to compete with works created by professional screenwriters. When you revisit the manga you once adored, you might realize that the plot was actually quite simple, even somewhat childish, because manga primarily caters to teenagers and the plot shouldn't be overly complex. However, once there's an opportunity to adapt it into a live-action version supported by professional screenwriters, there's actually more room for secondary creative interpretation. In this regard, American comics have done quite well. Many of Marvel's masterpieces, such as the Captain America series, Iron Man series, and even the Avengers, underwent substantial adaptations, and the final results often surpassed the original comics. Of course, these are purely my personal opinions. If you have any other thoughts, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Let's discuss together. In conclusion, I hope that this live-action version of One Piece will bring us even more surprises in its second season. After all, I'm filled with anticipation for how Chopper's introduction will be handled.
Well, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share our video. And don't forget to ring the bell for updates, so that YouTube's algorithm can better recommend our channel. See ya!